Did you ever do that thing with flowers where you pick petals off one by one saying, she loves me not, she loves me, until you're left with one petal and the answer to your question? No? Oh, me neither. How do you know if somebody loves you? Well, Cher told us the secret is in their kiss, but that can only work for romantic love. And we know there's far more to love than romance. There's a great book called The 5 Love Languages. It's about how we give and receive love. The 5 languages are quality time, words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, and receiving gifts. When you understand somebody's love language, you can show them love in a way that helps them feel loved. Acts of service and gifts are my love languages. Now, they're really the same thing. I feel loved, valued, and appreciated when someone goes out of their way for me. When they do something for me or go to the trouble of getting me a gift that they've thought about. I came back from our summer holidays to discover that some of the team had tidied and decorated my office. We had decorated the out office before the summer, but mine had been left and lots of stuff had been dumped in there. I was so touched by this act. It made me feel valued and reminded me that I love being part of this team and this church. Now, this message is the second in a series called Unshakable. We're exploring how we can have a faith that allows us to be unshakable. And it starts with building our lives upon the foundation of Jesus. This creates a security for us. It gives us confidence. And confidence is a big deal. Being unshakable and having confidence goes hand in hand. At the heart of the Christian faith is an invitation to follow Jesus. Jesus invites us into a relationship, not a religion. It's a personal relationship and it's built on the same basis of any personal relationship. Love. Does God love us? Does God love me? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Now, you probably haven't picked a flower and pulled all the petals saying, he loves me not, he loves me not. But I wonder if you've ever wondered if God loves you, really. Of course he loves us because he's God and we're told that he loves all of us. But does he really love me? And how do I know? Well, we know if God loves us in the same way that we know our friends or our family love us. He shows us. He speaks our language. We're focusing this series on one chapter of the Bible, Romans 8. It's a letter Paul wrote to the church in Rome. It was a church that was struggling with division between the Jewish and Gentile Christians. The Jewish Christians wanted the Gentile Christians, that's basically anyone who isn't a Jew, to adopt their Jewish traditions and customs. Paul, through this letter, reminds them what really is important. It's not religion, it's relationship. He gives them and us an overview of the Christian faith, of who Jesus is, what he's done, and the impact it has on our lives as we seek to follow him today. And Romans 8 is a turning point in this letter, where Paul switches from looking back to looking forwards. I really recommend you read the entire letter, and especially this chapter. As you do, you'll see God fulfilling each of these 5 love languages. Now let's go through each of them quickly. Gary Chapman, the author of the original 5 love languages, has written a version called God Speaks Your Love Language. Get hold of a copy if you want to delve deeper into this. Now the first love language is words of affirmation. It's telling people we love them and what we love about them. God does this to us. The Bible is a key way in which he speaks these words of affirmation over us. If you want to hear what God thinks about you, then you have to spend time reading his word. Now let me give you a quick example. Here's some words that John wrote in his first letter. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. The overarching message of the Bible is of God's love for us. We can often fixate on what he's done to show this love, but how often do we allow ourselves to sit back and allow him to speak words of love and affirmation over us? God delights in you. Just allow that to sink in. You bring joy to God. We see these words of affirmation all around us, not just in the Bible. For me, creation is a big way in which I can hear and encounter God's love for me. I see it in a sunset. I'd probably see it in a sunrise too if I was up early enough. I see it in the vastness of the oceans, in the power and strength of the mountains. I see it in the beauty of a valley. if I take time to pause in these moments, I can sense God speaking words of love and affirmation to me through his creation. The second love language is quality time. And do you know that God loves to spend time with you? He has created eternity for you and him. But that eternity starts now. Here's something that James wrote about this. James was the brother of Jesus, and this is one of the reasons why I believe that Jesus is who he says he is, that he's more than just a man. James, his younger brother, believed that Jesus was the Messiah. He believed that his brother was his God. Now, I've got a brother. It would take a lot for me to believe that he's anything more than my annoying brother. So did James. It wasn't until after Jesus had been crucified and came back to life that James realized his brother truly was the Messiah, that he was God. Anyway, this is what James says. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. He doesn't do this because he has to, but because he wants to. Do you know the story that Jesus told about the prodigal son? He left his dad and went off on his own. And when he realizes that he's made a mistake, he comes to his senses and he starts his journey home. But his dad had been waiting and watching for him. And whilst he was still a long way off, his dad runs to him to greet him. It's an image of what God does for us and shows us a glimpse of his heart for us. God is never in a hurry. God takes his time. He doesn't rush. Yet when it comes to being with us, he runs. All it takes is for us to come to our senses, or for us to allow ourselves to stop whatever it is that we're doing that gets in the way of God and be with him, and he's there. It often takes me time to experience and encounter God, but that's because I have to still myself. I have to remove the things that are distracting me from seeing him and hearing him. And when I do this, I realize that he's been there all along. He's never left my side. He's always been with me. Next up is gifts. Now, where do we start with this one? Everything I have is a gift from God. My life is a gift from God. My family and my friends are a gift from God. Now, that should be enough in itself, but he keeps giving. In other letters, Paul talks about spiritual gifts or talents or abilities that God has given us to help us and to help us help others. What are you good at? That's a gift. Take a look at these words that Paul writes to us in Romans 8. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? You see, God has given us the gift of himself. Jesus is the ultimate gift that cost him everything. Now, what's the best gift that you've given someone? What did it cost you? In terms of time, energy, and money. Do you regret it? Now, I bet you don't if you love whoever it is that you gave it to. God doesn't regret the cost of his gift to you. He doesn't regret the pain or suffering that he endured for you. He looks at you full of love and says, you're worth it. Wow. Fourthly, we've got physical touch. Now, there's loads of examples in the Gospels of Jesus demonstrating love by touching people. He embraced a leper who probably hadn't been touched by anyone since he contracted the disease. He healed a sick woman who was thought of as unclean because she was constantly menstruating. She thought, if I just touch Jesus, then I'll be healed. And she was. And she did it in secret because that act made Jesus ceremonially unclean according to their traditions and laws. But Jesus knew what had happened, and he wanted to let this woman know that he knew what she was facing and that he loved her. And the opening words of John's Gospel, of John's account of the life of Jesus, tells us that God took on flesh and lived among us. The Creator became created. He took on a physical form that was the same as ours. As we discovered in the first message in this series, Jesus became what we are so we could become what he is. But what about us today? We can't go up to Jesus and touch him like they did. We can't go up to God and give him a hug. But that doesn't mean we can't touch God or be touched by him. There have been many moments in my life where I've encountered and experienced the presence of God in an almost physical, tangible way. There have been times, often during moments of worship, where I've become aware that God is with me. I feel like he's right by my side, but also in front and behind me as well. I have moments where it's felt like God is physically wrapping his arms around me. I felt like he's hugging me. I know that sounds weird, and it is a bit. I can't quite explain it, but if you've experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. And lastly, we have works of service. What has God ever done for us? Okay, he created the universe and he gave us life. He came as a man to rescue us from the consequence of our sin. He's given us the gift of his spirit to live within us, to help us through life. He gets involved in what we're involved with day to day. He helps us through life. He helps us overcome the challenges that life throws at us. But apart from that, what has God ever done for us? Here's another verse that Paul has written in Romans 8. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. God is at work in all things, and in all things, he is working for our good. Now, that doesn't mean that God is working to make things easy for us. He isn't working to make life comfortable and privileged. He's working for our good, and who better to know what is good for us than God? My faith tells me that even when I can't see him or feel him or hear him, even in the darkest moments of my life, God is at work. So does God love me? Really? Well, of course he does. What more evidence do you need? He speaks your language. He speaks words of love and affirmation over you. He wants to spend quality time with you. He's got good gifts for you. He wants you to feel him, to experience and encounter his presence. And he loves to do things for you, to demonstrate his love for you. God loves you. You can be confident of that. When someone loves us and we know they love us, it gives us confidence in life. It helps us face our day. It helps us get through whatever it is that we need to get through. When we feel loved, we feel unshakable. That's a good thing. So allow this truth that God loves you to give you confidence. Allow it to make you unshakable. But there's an important aspect of love that we've overlooked. Love finds its true power and true impact when it's reciprocated. One-sided love does not have the fullness that love can have. God loves you. Do you love him? Now, use the same language to help you see how you can love God. Words of affirmation. Tell God what you think of him. Use your own words. Sing songs of praise. Read the Psalms or other verses in the Bible to help you express your love for him. Quality time. Spend time with him. Make it a priority. Put it in your diary. Protect it. Sit in his presence. Go for a walk. Find the way that you best connect with God and do it. And do it often. Gifts. God's ultimate gift to you is himself. Return the favor. Give him yourself. Jesus told us that the most important thing is to love God with everything we have. And then he went on to tell us how we can actually do this. According to Jesus, we love God through loving others. Use the gifts you have to help others, to love others, to serve others. When you do this, you love God, you help God, you serve God. Physical touch. Now, this is harder for most of us because we have to think outside the box. Think about what touches God, what moves him, and do that. But also lean into quality time. Spend time with God in worship and devotion. Draw near to him, and he will draw near to you. And finally, works of service. Are you asking God to help you, or are you seeking to serve him? We've already covered some of the ways in which we can do this. The important thing is getting our heart and motivation right as we seek to serve him. That it's for him and not for us. Now, these 5 love languages are a great way for us to have a balanced and healthy approach towards how we love God. We all speak a slightly different language. The challenge with that is we can easily skew what we think it means to love God. See, I'm an activist. I see value in doing. I think that when all is said and done, often more is said than done. My challenge is I can easily spend more time and focus doing things for God than I do in being with him. In what I do, I could easily spend more time talking about God than talking to God. Now, the reverse is true. For some of us, we see more value in quality time, in spending time with God, resting in his presence. That's crucial and important, but it's not love if that's all we do. From that place of rest, from that place of being in God's presence, we have to get up and do. We have to use our gifts and serve him. It's important to recognize that doing these things doesn't mean you love God or anyone. You can do all the things in the 5 love languages, but still not love. Love isn't a result. It doesn't happen because we do. We do because we love. The 5 love languages are a great way to help us express the love that we have for God. We engage in these things because we love God. It's a natural response. Now, having said that, I do think that actively and intentionally engaging in loving God in this way will help us love God. It can be easy to feel distant from God, to feel disconnected from him. These actions and attitudes can help, but only if we get our motivation right. Just focusing on the action can easily turn into religion. And Jesus hasn't invited you to a religion, but to a relationship. Get that right, and the rest will follow. God loves you. You can be confident of that. He's demonstrated and declared his love for you. For us to experience the fullness of this love, for us to live in the confidence that this love brings, to build our lives on the foundation of his love, for us to allow this love to make us unshakable, we need to complete it by loving him back. So this week, open your eyes to see how God is showing you his love and find ways to love him back.